This conversation is for community purposes only. It's not medical, mental health, or professional advice. We are sharing lived experiences and personal perspective. We encourage listeners to seek support that's right for them. Thank you all for being here. Welcome back to Seen, Not Fixed, a Spoonly podcast. I'm Nicole Pedra, and this space is for honest conversations about chronic illness, mental health, and the parts of living in a body that doesn't always translate neatly to the outside world. This conversation today is really going to be about what it's like to live in a body that needs a lot of intention just to get through the day, and what it takes to stay connected to your body when fixing it isn't really an option. So I'm very excited to have Danny O'Malley here today. Danny works in somatic support, basically body-based care, and he brings a perspective of caregiving and really learning on how to slow down when life doesn't give you clear answers. I'm also joined by Lindsey Provencher. Lindsey works in somatic support also and talks really honestly about how exhausting it can be to constantly pay attention to your body when you're dealing with pain or ongoing symptoms. And last but not least, I'm joined by Cara Bowman. Cara has lived with chronic illness for years, and she shares very openly about what it's like to keep going when your body keeps changing and other people don't always see it. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.
Hi, thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
Thank
Of
you.
course. I want to start today with a question. Thinking back to the hardest seasons, what did it feel like just being in your body?
When I first got diagnosed, it was very lonely. It didn't feel like anyone understood. It still doesn't, but obviously I've lived with it for a while, and I know that's just kind of how it is. And I feel like when you find your people, for example, social media, you find a lot of connection with people who have similar conditions. So it's not as isolating when the people in like your actual life don't understand, but you have that connection through social media. And so you
Right.
have your people, and it seems to make it a little bit easier, or at least for me, it did.
I mean, coming out on social media about my diagnosis changed my life completely. Originally, I kept my disease a secret for 2 decades. And I finally came out because, after certain moments in culture where we saw women coming out about things that they had previously been ashamed of, I, thought to myself, well, I should not be ashamed of this. They're so brave. I'm going to be brave too. And, what I got back and what people were saying, I didn't think people would care. I thought people would judge me. And just like you, the support from a community, it's really changed my life. And meeting people has brought me to tears in the past. So I totally agree with you. And I know for you, Lindsey, you really struggled at one point with chronic pain through an accident, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think mine was a bit different because I knew there was something wrong because I was in constant pain, and going to medical providers and having them say, "Oh, it takes a while to recover. You're fine. Oh, just give it a little more time." And I think a lot of people hear that on a regular basis. They know something isn't working, something is wrong, something is not feeling like themselves. And when somebody who is a medical professional doesn't see it or tells you to give it more time or invalidates it in some way, it can feel really defeating, and it can feel like we don't know our own bodies.
Yeah, that's just the whole process can be so frustrating, right? And I know, Danny, for you, you have a child who struggles with being neurodivergent. So, kind of what have you seen, like the difficulty of your child being in their own body and the struggles that they've had?
Yeah, at first, when you asked this question, I was wondering how to answer, like how it felt to be in my own body because I wasn't the one experiencing the chronic illness or the neurodivergence. But then I realized that my wife and I experienced a lot of isolation, a lot of stress from not knowing what was going on because our daughter, who's now 5, was born with a really rare genetic disorder and had a lot of medical complications for the first several years of her life. And our intuition was really telling us that there was something else going on here, some deeper level that was not being addressed. And we were just being told over and over, she's been through a lot of medical trauma. She might just take a little longer to kind of come into herself, come into her body. And it took years of us feeling isolated and a little bit dismissed by the medical system to figure out, oh, there is something deeper going on here. And, she had several specialists and all of them were very good at addressing their one thing, but nobody could really tie it all together. And so my wife and I had a lot of isolation, a lot of anxiety about we don't have an answer and we don't really know what to do or how to really serve our daughter's interests to the best of our ability. So
I was going to say, even being a caregiver, having someone in your life, I do not overlook the fact that me getting sick when I was 10 with something so rare to see in a child had major effects on my brother and my sister, right? It changed the way my parents were able to give attention, especially my mom, who gave me a lot of attention. And as my brother, who's an older brother, he wanted to protect me all the time. And he is in a career where he works in the healthcare system and he's always fighting for healthcare startups, but it shows up in other people's bodies in totally different ways.
And my wife and I kind of talk about our daughter, her name is Leela, as like a master teacher in really reflecting where we are at with our nervous system. And she was the first time I really learned about somatics. It was through learning about how to really effectively communicate with her, because however I was showing up in the space, she would reflect that to me. And it was like confusing and a little frustrating, and I didn't know what was going on. And so learning how to regulate your own nervous system is so important in the role of a caregiver. I started to use the metaphor of like lending her my nervous system so she could ground and feel safe enough to open up so we could have a genuine interaction.
Yeah. Cara, what age was kind of the onset and start of the several chronic illnesses that I know you have to manage? Can you just tell me a little bit more about your experience?
Yes. Ever since I was a kid, I was always the child that had a stomach ache. I always didn't feel good. But of course, your typical kid, they were like, oh, she doesn't want to go to school. She doesn't want to take the test. She doesn't
You're
want to.
faking it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, honestly. And so it was always my stomach hurts, my stomach hurts. And they're like, well, your stomach can't be hurting this much. And then you start to question yourself. And I mean, I was little, like we're talking probably 5 at the time. And then things got really bad when I was in the 4th grade. I ended up like passing out at school because of the pain. And then that's when people were like, okay, maybe she's not joking. And so went to the doctor. I got diagnosed with like gastritis, so just inflammation of the stomach. And that continued on from 4th grade up until 10th grade. I went off to a cheer camp, and within 10 minutes of me being there, like I'm about to pass out. So I went to the trainer and I was like, listen, I don't feel good. I'm very nauseous. I'm weak. My chest hurts. And she was like, oh, eating disorder. She was like, I know how girls like you are. Thankfully, my mom was at this camp, and one of the other girls, her mom was there, and she's actually a nurse, and she was very close with me. But aside from that, everybody was very unsupportive. They were like, you were being dramatic, you were making this up, you're doing it to yourself. Awful experience. Like, do not recommend. But when I finally got back from camp, we were like, something is seriously wrong. Within a couple months, I had gotten diagnosed with Crohn's. And then up until now, it's just been domino effect, one thing after another.
So speaking of that, and I know through Lindsey and Danny, with your experience and your backgrounds with somatic care, a lot of people with chronic illness end up paying so much attention to what's going on in their bodies, like all the time. When do you think that kind of helps? And when does that start to wear you down? Cara, I'm sure you can relate to having that struggle of being scared and how to manage not being in that situation all the time and being all consumed.
That's a really good question. And I think a lot of times, just as Cara explained perfectly, is we have this natural intuition in our bodies. And after so many people have denied or rejected or invalidated in one way or another, it's so easy to also question ourselves. And then it makes somatics even harder to lean into because it requires leaning into rather than away from. And so it's so difficult to turn that back on because there's that hyper awareness of pain and what is hurting. Let me scan it. The second my eyes open in the morning, let me scan. How am I doing? Am I okay? Did I cause something? Did I eat the wrong thing? Did I walk the wrong way? What could I have done differently?
I know like my number one question is this normal? Is this normal? Go to my doctor. I'm like, well, is this normal? And he's like, Nicole, your normal is a different normal than everybody else. So it's very hard to register because sometimes it's just the natural shifts we experience with these diseases we have and the unpredictability. And, sometimes we do have to be hyper aware, but sometimes it really doesn't benefit us.
I think the hypervigilance is so pervasive, even as a person not with a chronic illness, just the amount of stress that we're met with constantly in our world is so intense. Sometimes when people come into a somatic session, part of meeting them where they're at is not necessarily trying to activate that further, or as you were saying, Lindsey, like lean into that. Sometimes the immediate thing is just, let's find a place of restoration, find a place where inside feels safe. We can just be there for as long as you need. And so really allowing ourselves the time to slow down and really feel into a space of safety and comfort. And from there, we can kind of titrate into those more activated spaces to process through.
Well, I know for me, calming myself was scary because then I had to be aware of what was happening in my body. And I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to be aware of it because it was almost so scary and so all consuming because I don't want to feel this because then I'm going to be super aware of the fact that it's very uncomfortable. Is there like a middle ground or a way? Because that rumination can really affect your nervous system. And how do you regulate that?
One of my favorites is co-regulating with someone else. Maybe there's a support system. Maybe there's somebody to hug and hold, because then you are feeling their nervous system. You're not focusing totally here. You're physically in your body. And it can be so beautiful to just feel somebody else's skin or have their hug or feel their heartbeat so that you're not constantly in your body worrying.
For me, and I imagine for you, Cara, I think we get that a little bit through what we do on social media and the community we create there. Sometimes I just go to my husband, I'm like really upset by what's happening in my body. Like I did that today. And I was like, I just need a hug and I need to be upset for a moment. But we don't always have those people to give us that. And I find that through social media, that's another outlet where I can tell them I'm ruminating about things. And the fact that other people also are makes me feel a bit better and that I don't have to focus on it so much.
And I found that people on social media, they almost know what to say. People in my life, everyone is very supportive, but they just don't know how to help. They just don't know what to say. So when I'm having issues like that, I immediately go to those few people that I have that I'm really close to. And just them hearing me out and being like, oh, yeah, it's okay. It's fine. It's normal. Really just calms me down more than anything.
Right. I mean, recognition is such a powerful thing to experience, right? Being able to mirror where, oh, this person is just like me or they get it. That is such a powerful tool to have. And I know for me, one of my biggest complaints as a child and then going through puberty and high school with these issues, which is very difficult, was you don't understand. You just don't understand. So anything you're saying is kind of irrelevant because you don't get it. So
Yes.
with social media, we do get that. What do you do, Cara, and how do you help people, Danny and Lindsey, really with the fact that your body keeps surprising you in ways that affect your trust? Every time our body is doing something that is surprising us, we kind of like lose a little trust in it. So how are we regulating our nervous systems and trusting our body, even though it shows up in ways that we can't control? I started doing this thing where I read the Bible in the morning and that kind of helps ground me. But the other thing I do is I doodle, and then I have these really good acrylic markers and I will just color it in with bright colors and put different designs on it. It's a place where I can totally feel safe and place my focus.
What I hear you talking about, Nicole, is something that I bring into sessions, finding anchor points of safety and stability, even though your body is surprising you all the time, which can make you feel like a foreign thing to the other thing that is you. Finding some small anchor point, even if it's just lighting a candle or placing your hand on your heart, if there's the littlest thing you can do to make you feel a little bit of like, okay, there I am, even though that pain is creeping up on me and I can't take it anymore. This little sense of, okay, here I am, I'm right here with it. And I love that you're bringing up art and things that you can do in your daily routine and your schedule, because those can help you find some stability when your body doesn't feel safe.
And like, I don't know about you, Cara, but sometimes I go through phases with things. Something works for a while, and then I'm like, ooh, obsessed with one thing. And then, like, a month later, you're like, oh, I'm over it. Right. So, did you go through a phase where you were just scared all the time, just worried about like your health and what was going to happen?
Honestly, no, I didn't. In the beginning, when I got sick, I felt like I was so sick that nothing bothered me. I was sleeping all the time, and that's all I was doing. When I was awake, I wasn't really thinking about what was going on with my own body. And then from that time up until probably 2 years ago, nothing really phased me. I was like, this is all a part of the Lord's plan, that He's going to work it out how He wants to. Full trust, no big deal. And then probably a year, if not 2 years ago, it got to the point where I was panicked over every little thing. Like, every little thing scared me, every little thing startled me. I was constantly stressed about things I had no control about. So actually one of my goals for 2026 was to work on regulating my nervous system, because I love to put my feelings on the back burner. I'm like, "We'll worry about this another day." And I've done that for a little too long, and so everyone's like, "You are in fight or flight, and you've gotta get out of it. You're stuck in it now." And I'm like, "Probably, but tell me how to get out of it." And they're like, "Well." So I was like, "Okay, start of the new year, I'm moving out. I'll be in my own space, just a quiet place where I can start working on things to better me and to really focus. That's not, medication or
Right.
things like that."
Here, I think a fresh start on stuff sometimes is really, at least for me, there's resistance for me starting things because you just get like comfortable where you are. But there is a lot of value in that fresh start. And we have to believe, and I'm religious too, that these fresh starts, God will lead me in the right direction. Whether I go through something positive or negative, there's something to be learned there. And the good stuff will come eventually. So, Lindsey and Danny, what are some ways that you help people stay grounded? Because Cara and I are going into this new year trying to help regulate our nervous systems, and probably a lot of the listeners.
Usually, that's a good starting place for people who are open to it is breath. Breath work is an amazing first step in just calming the nervous system and getting out of that fight or flight and not feeling the panic, not feeling the heartbeat and the chest racing. I think we underestimate the power of micro movements and figuring out how to find comfort when we're struggling. Sometimes we need a warm, fuzzy blanket and pillow, and other times we need to lay on the floor and feel the comfort of a structure below us. And other times we want to stand up and touch the grass outside. And we just need different things for different times, kind of like we were talking about earlier.
Do you suggest things to try out, or do you tell them like maybe to quiet their body and try to be present and just go what direction their body needs? I don't know if pacing is the healthiest thing, but I pace a lot. Certain things like playing with my hair. I do love laying on the ground. I do find that thing just comfortable and it just helps me feel.
I can definitely recommend things. I like to ask the client typically what feels good in your body or how do you usually calm? Because, like you said before, sometimes quiet means I'm not safe or my thoughts become louder or my body feels stronger or it can go into a really healthy place or it can go into a fear place. And if they're in a fear place, then we're not calming the nervous system, we're activating the nervous system. So I like to ask a lot of questions. What is your body needing right now? Do we need to lift it up or do we need to slow it down?
Oh, I just love what you're saying, Lindsey, because it changes based on where somebody's at in the moment. Because sometimes you can tell if somebody's coming into a session and they're feeling activated, and that pacing energy that you mentioned, Nicole, you can take that and kind of amplify it and move it into like really dynamic, authentic movement. And you take it and you flush it out of the nervous system. It wants to go somewhere. And so sometimes the answer is let's amplify this, mobilize it, and release it. And sometimes what they need, like you're saying, Lindsey, is to move in with more grounding. And something that I do at the beginning of some sessions based on who I'm working with, and I do this a lot myself, is just taking 2 or 3 minutes, which doesn't seem like that long, but it's kind of a long time to just literally look around your room and just notice the texture on the wall and any sounds you hear or the shape of things. You really take time to just sit there, look around and like let your eyes trace the walls. you'll find that you start to feel a little bit more settled in.
Yeah, paying attention to your senses, right? All the different ones you have. Do you find though, you're talking about people who are overwhelmed, that sometimes that leads to not the best decisions, whether it's being addicted or people turn to alcohol to kind of calm themselves? Do you find that people do these not so good ways of dealing it with like drugs or alcohol?
That definitely can be something people turn to, of course. It's a quick fix. It's something that immediately changes feelings, mindsets. And we're doing two forms of work. We're doing
Mhm.
healing from the substance and the brain realizing how to get natural levels of dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, all of that, as well as reconnecting with it and allowing the voice to come back to the body. So it then becomes more layers of work that we do.
Right. And I know that psychedelics have become more popular, microdosing and stuff. Annie, you have some experience in something like this and looking towards that? I know there's a lot of research now that is pointing to these options.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I went through a training program for psilocybin facilitation through an organization in Portland, Oregon called Intertrek. And aside from somatic coaching, I also offer integration coaching after people have had a psychedelic experience. And so some of these alternative practices like psychedelics can help reorient that framework of what am I trying to fill and why is there a hole there in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I struggled with a lot of PTSD from medical trauma. I don't know if you've had this experience, Cara, when you were younger, but I had to go to therapy and experience EMDR. Is that what it is? And I literally had to watch something that looked like a light bright system that moved because I would go into hysterics when I had to get a second spinal tap because I had a botched one and I had to become desensitized. So, like, I'm the kind of person who's like, I'll try this, I'll try that, anything because I wonder like how much better my nervous system could be. And like sometimes I've discovered, oh, wait, other people aren't struggling like this, especially with thoughts and things. Probably a reason you also experience fight or flight. You're like, oh, wait, everyone doesn't have their shoulders up to their ears all the time. Like,
I know. Yeah.
right? So, do you recommend some of these experiences or even like the yoga to help with people who have experienced PTSD?
Absolutely. I think it can definitely be helpful. Usually, with somebody who has great insight and they have already done some therapeutic work, so they know what triggers them and what doesn't trigger them. And they have really strong grounding ability. Because if we're doing some movement that is causing a strong physiological response, it's really great when they are able to say, oh, that's not working for me right now. And then we can move into
Right.
something else. But there's also trauma sensitive yoga, and that is fully based on choice. So it sounds very
Mhm.
different. It sounds strange to me the first time I did it, but it is very much an empowering practice where all of the
Mhm.
movements are given with choice invitation language. So it would sound
Mhm.
like on the next inhale, you can decide what feels right for your body. We can take an inhale and you can lift your right hand. And when you're ready, it can lower to the side. And if that
Mhm.
feels pleasant to you, you can try again. If not, you can move to the next one. And it's very invitation only, reconnecting with the body and just exploring. Does this feel okay? Does my right arm feel different than my left?
Do you find that sometimes when people go through this process, they get super emotional or they break down because it's uncomfortable? Sometimes when we experience, it's like, get me out of here. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to sit and listen to what's happening in my body. Just let me keep going to distract, pushing those emotions away. Because sometimes
Hmm.
they're like
Yeah.
super overwhelming when you actually do confront them. I mean, Kara, like, what do you do to kind of help yourself when you're getting overwhelmed? Like, what is your kind of go to?
I'm a terrible person to answer that because I am still trying to figure that out, but it's just once I go to confront these emotions, I'm like, "Oh, this is a lot deeper than I thought it was, and
Yeah.
I don't like this at all. I will just ignore it." And
Mhm.
so that's kinda where I'm at. Gonna start working on that better, but
Sometimes it's a coping
terrible.
mechanism. I've been through like 16 therapists in my life because, my parents had me go and I was just like, nope, not looking at that. You know, I don't want to pay attention to being sick. I'm going to pretend like I'm not sick and I'm going to do everything as good as a healthy person, if not better, right? I just ignored everything. And when I finally started confronting it and being present, it was super overwhelming. So
Yeah.
I totally understand being at that point in your life. And look, it's okay. My brother always says to me, your journey is your journey. You will deal with things when it is appropriate to your time.
Increased self-awareness. You don't always want it like to turn on like a fire hose. And in fact, that can feel like, I'm not ready for this. So I love what your brother's saying. This is your journey. And I've heard you mention, am I normal? Is this normal? I don't really think much about that concept because everybody's having their own unique set of experiences. And it doesn't really help to gauge yourself on what other people are going through because you know what's going on. So finding those places of trust in yourself that, okay, right now I have the strength to look at this. And so I'm going to.
Right. I mean, if I was diagnosed with one of my chronic illnesses as an adult, I would have handled it a lot better. But I think, especially being a child, all you want at that age is to be like everyone else. You don't want to be the weird one, right? So, a lot of times we just end up masking things and hiding how we really feel. And then we're paying attention to all our peers so much. For me, for a while, I was like, I don't even know how I feel about this because I was so used to picking up on other people and what I should be like that I was like, I have no idea how I am. So it's really tough, especially at that age when you just don't want to be different, right?
And I feel like kids, they already
Mhm.
have a tough time regulating their emotions. Add on this on top of it, everything kind of crashes down.
Yeah.
When I got sick, I was going into 10th grade, so I
Mhm.
wanted nothing more than to be like everyone else around me. I wanted to be able to do the things that they did, and when I would push myself to do those things, it would only make me worse, and then I would get
Mhm.
frustrated with myself. It was almost like a spiral of, I can't do what I used to do, I can't do what everyone else can do, and then when I started posting on social media and I had other people coming forward, I almost felt more at peace with everything because I was
Mhm.
like, okay, there are people who get what I'm saying. I'm not crazy.
Right.
Because I would have times where I would be in such bad pain all the time that I'm like, maybe I am crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm doing this to myself. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm just thinking I'm in pain, but I'm not. Because I would get to the point where I'm like, okay, well, doctors say it's normal. Testing says it's normal.
Right. Am I just
Everyone,
being dramatic? Like, just
right.
is this how it feels for everyone else, and they're fine coping with it, but I'm not. Speaking of social media, I wanted to just tap on what this kind of advocacy and this kind of helping others has really meant to you. What your passion is from it, and kind of why your passion became that.
I find that posting on social media gives me a sense of peace. I really do feel like I was, and it sounds so silly, but I feel like I was diagnosed with all these things for a reason. And I
Mhm.
feel like I don't know what the purpose of it was. I don't know what good is going to come out of it, but I do see my social media platform as being good. This is what I was given these diagnoses for. And if I was given this platform to just help one other person, then that's what I'm gonna do, and I find myself here and there, I don't know if you've heard people say this before, I'm sure you have, but there's a lot of people who are like, "Well, you just have to act like you're not sick, you can't let it be your whole identity."
Oh, I
And
hate that.
yeah, and so for a while, I was like, "Am I making it my identity? Maybe I need to kinda take a step back and not post so much because I didn't want it to be my identity, but there came a point where it consumed so much of me and it didn't matter if I wanted to act like it did or not, it did. And so I
Mhm.
either could fully lean in and embrace that and hopefully try to get some good out of it or just ignore it and be unhappy, try to
Right.
deal with it without people who knew what I was going through.
Right, but also that part of identity is what is helping others. People don't need to see my modeling career or things like that. That almost feels like showing people the highlights, where having our diseases is where a lot of the vulnerability lies. And that's what people really want to see. They don't want to see things that are perfect and whatnot. They really want to see authenticity and that they're not alone. I struggled so much with so much anger and so much frustration as a child that I felt that this was my way of turning my pain into purpose. And I feel like going through that was so I could help others. And my whole thing is I don't want people to struggle the way I struggled. And I want to be someone who can inspire them or meet them where they're at. But if I can help someone navigate and not live in that anger for so long like I did, then hallelujah. Right. So I was saying before, Danny and Lindsey, the outward care and kind of what you do and why you're doing it.
I'm connecting with so much of what you're saying, Nicole, and what I'm hearing and what's alive for me is a path of service. And at the heart of that path of service is recognizing how much suffering is out in the world. It's just like a basic tenet of being a human, and helping people find tools to alleviate that suffering as much as possible is really at the core of why I do what I do, whether that's somatic coaching at Spoonly or psychedelic integration coaching. I also have a business called Earth Dream where I take people out into nature to get them immersed in something that feels really expansive and almost getting in touch with something greater and higher than themselves. But at the core of it is just really helping people live more whole lives, hopefully free of suffering as much as possible.
And for me, I feel like just being heard and being truly seen is so powerful, especially with people who have not been seen for so long, or they've been rejected, or the medical system and complications, or trauma from just all the medical procedures. Just being able to be with somebody in that space and see all of the beauty and all of the ugly and all of the in between that comes out, and see their greatness in it. Because like both of you have been saying, is people already know. We already have our purpose on the inside, but all of the other stuff in the world gets in the way. So reconnecting with that internal space and figuring out what else is there that maybe I haven't been able to give space to, but what else do I want to bloom in my life?
I mean, that's why the podcast is called Seen, Not Fixed. We're here to give people that recognition, not try to fix them. So my closing question to all of you is, what do you wish or think people should stop telling chronically ill people?
I think my number one comment that I hate hearing is, "So glad you're doing better. You look so good." And I'm like, hold up. Whoever said I was doing better? And they're like, "Well, you look good." And I'm like, "Well, I'm glad I look good, but it has nothing to do with looks." And
Yeah.
so I think that's the biggest thing for me, is showing people that it has nothing to do with physical appearance whatsoever. I mean, if I look sick, then you should really start to worry, because I'm probably 1,000 times worse than I'm telling you I am. So, and it's called, invisible illness for a reason. You can't see it on the outside.
Exactly. And so, Danny and Lindsey, what do you think people should stop saying from your points of view that's not helpful?
Oh man, yeah, this is a vulnerable question for me because for many years at the beginning of my marriage with my wife, we've been married for 13 years now, but she suffered with invisible illness that was undiagnosed for many years. And as somebody who doesn't have that same experience, I remember many times where now I feel so much shame about it, but it took me a lot of learning and growth to recognize that comments like that, like, "Oh, seems like you're doing great today." Things that from my perspective were boosting and giving energy, these things that come from a place of sympathy or an unwillingness to really sit with and recognize where somebody else is at. There's no way to fully understand what somebody else is going through. So exactly like you just said, Cara, it's so invalidating. Anything that feels like an othering statement or wanting them to be something more than what they're expressing to you is really not helpful.
It dismisses how we feel, right? And it's not validating.
I struggle because I've heard so many clients say, yeah, my provider just told me that I just need to fix my mental health, or I just need to think differently. The mind and the body are so connected that I don't believe it's one or the other. I think when we're working on one, we're working on the other too, and they're both intertwined completely. It's not a quick fix. It's a gradual journey over time. So if it were a quick fix, if we could just fix it, we would.
Totally agree. Well, that concludes the episode for today. I want to thank you for being a part of this conversation. And for anyone out there, if this resonates with you, I just want you to know that you're not alone and we are here to sit beside you. Thank you again, guys.